Today we are going to discuss about class 2 data warehousing definition, data warehousing architecture, concepts within the data warehouse, and data warehousing is going to contain data. For that reason we should know about what is data and what types of data we can store in the data warehouse. And in order to bring the data from SAP components to SAP BW, we required data sources. So we are going to discuss about the data sources. And in order to store the data in the BW system, we required certain objects. We typically call them as data targets. And in order to establish the linkage in between SAP components, means SAP ERP components like SAP ECC system, CRM system and SCM system with SAP BW, we need to come up with the interfaces. So we are going to discuss about interfaces and different source system types. So let me get start with data warehousing definition. So what is a data warehouse? Why we need to know about data warehouse? SAP BW is data warehousing solution from SAP. It's a data warehousing system. So before stepping into SAP BW, we should know what is a data warehouse. Let me start with data warehouse simple definition. Data warehouse in the sense database plus services. What kind of services? We know already database is useful to store the data. In data warehousing systems, we required a database and we are going to see a database, and along with that we are going to see certain services like reporting services and ETL services. Reporting services are useful for generating the reports, and ETL services are useful for extraction purpose. Now if you are seeing a system or application with a database, along with that if you are seeing reporting services and ETL services, then we call that one as a data warehousing solution. The main objective of any data warehousing system is we need to store the data, and using that data we need to generate the reports. So outcome of any data warehousing solution is reports, and these reports are useful for analysis purpose for the end users, and they can come up with the right decision making. Now this is very simple definition for data warehouse, and along with this we have other definition, and that is nothing but copy of transactional data specially restructured for specially restructured for reporting and analysis. This is data warehousing other definition, copy of transactional data specially restructured for reporting and analysis. I splitted definition into 3 parts and we'll discuss about each part. The first part, copy of transactional data. Whenever we buy a data warehousing solution from a vendor, consider this one as a data warehousing solution. And in this data warehousing solution we have obviously two parts. One is a database and another one is reporting. Now this is front end and this is back end of any data warehousing system, and front end in the sense reporting tools, and back end in the sense obviously database. Whenever we purchased a data warehousing solution from any vendor, a data warehousing system is a kind of empty box and you don't see any data within it, and we cannot create the data also. Create data is not possible, and if you want to modify the data within the system, it is not possible. And if you try to delete the data from the data warehousing system, it is possible to delete the data, but we need to restore the data although we delete the data. So all DML operations are not at all possible in the data warehousing system. So we have to keep the data in data warehousing system, then only we can generate the reports using the data. So every data warehousing systems typically depends on other systems in order to get the data. Now other systems in the sense ERP systems or OLTP systems. We have OLTP systems. OLTP systems looks something like this. We can have front end and back end. Back end in the sense, again you are going to see a database in order to store the data, and in front end obviously you are going to see front end screens. These screens are useful to create data. Say we can create sales orders and purchase orders. So we can create sales orders and purchase orders using front end screens of OLTP systems, and these OLTP systems again known as ERP systems. In SAP world, this is SAP ECC system. SAP ECC system is an operational system, and using SAP ECC system we can create data. Once we created data, then the data will be generated and it will store in the underlying database tables, and these tables are going to hold the data, and this data we can copy from this database and we can store the data into this database. And once we have stored the data in this database, then using reporting tools we can generate decision making reports. Using reporting tools we can generate decision making reports. Now what we are doing, the transactional data we are generating here, later on we are copying transactional data for analysis purpose from here to here. Now this is nothing but copying transactional data. So transactional data will be generated in the ERP systems and OLTP systems, and once data has been generated, for analysis purpose we copy the data into the data warehousing systems, and this is nothing but copy of transactional data, and concept wise this is known as extraction. Now copy of transactional data, and this is concept wise we call it as extraction. Extraction in the sense copying the data from one database to another database. Most of the time we do transfer the data from ERP systems or OLTP systems to OLAP systems or data warehousing systems. Now once we copy the data, we have to store the data in the BW system. Let me copy this and let me copy this one also. And once we are copying the data into the database to OLTP database to OLAP database, we are going to store the data in OLAP system database. Now here we are going to store the data in tables, and we are going to store the data here in info cubes. Now table data we are copying and we are storing the data in the info cube. Info cube is multi-dimensional structure. Multi-dimensional structure. Table is, it is two-dimensional structure. Now the data whatever we have in the table are multiple tables, we are copying into two-dimensional structure data we are copying into multi-dimensional structure. This is nothing but restructuring. What we do, we create specially restructured objects, and once we have created these restructured objects, then we are going to keep the data in these restructured objects. Once we have kept the data in restructured objects, then we are going to generate the reports, and this is nothing but specially restructuring. Now, specially restructuring in the sense two-dimensional data, it is going to be stored as multi-dimensional data. It is going to stored as multi-dimensional data. Now, we need to create these multi-dimensional info cubes, and we have to store the data finally in these multi-dimensional info cubes. For what? For generating the reports. Now, creation of these multi-dimensional structures is nothing but a concept called modeling. As a BW consultant, what we do, we bring the data into the BW system. Once we bring the data into the BW system, we have to store the data in the BW system info cubes. So we have to generate or creation of these objects is nothing but modeling. We have to model info cubes. Once we have modeled the info cubes, then we have to store the data. Now, once info cubes are ready, see, we are going to store the data not only in the info cubes. Along with the info cubes, we have other data targets or other objects also there in the BW system, and we store the data in different objects, and creation of all these objects is nothing but modeling. And once we have copied the data and store the data into these objects, then we are going to generate the reports using reporting tools. Now, we are copying the data and we are storing the data. Then using reporting tools, we generate the reports. These reports are useful for analysis purpose. In BW, we have BEX and we have business objects. Nowadays, it is known as BI. Using these two reporting tools, we can generate the reports, multidimensional flexible reports, and which are really useful for analysis and decision making purpose. We can generate the reports and we can publish the reports to the portal also, so that users can access these reports from anywhere. And once we have published the reports to the users, then users can analyze the reports and they can come up with the analysis. Now, this is nothing but reporting and analysis, and the concept wise we call this one as a reporting. So in SAP BW, we have three concepts. One is extraction, and second one is modeling, and third one is reporting. Copy of transactional data specially restructured for reporting and analysis, and this is data warehouse definition. And copy of transactional data is known as extraction, and specially restructured objects creation is nothing but modeling, and generation of reports for analysis purpose using reporting tool is nothing but reporting. As a BW consultant in data warehousing systems, we are going to perform all three. Now, based on three concepts and the definition, we can split the architecture of data warehouse into three parts. First part, this is nothing but reporting, and second part, this is nothing but modeling layer, and third part, this is nothing but your source system layer. So finally we can change, or we can have architecture of any data warehousing solution into three parts. So this part is known as reporting or presentation layer, and this is known as data warehouse layer, and this is known as source system layer. Now finally we do extract the data from source system layer, and we do perform modeling, that is nothing but creation of objects in data warehousing layer, and we generate reports and present the reports to the end users in presentation layer. So finally we have three tier architecture, and the architecture is having three layers. One is source system layer, and second one is data warehousing layer, and third one is presentation layer. From source system layer we perform extraction, in data warehousing layer we perform modeling, and in presentation layer using reporting tools we generate reports. Now until now we discussed about data warehousing definition. It's very simple database with services or copy of transactional data specially restructured for reporting and analysis. And later on we discussed about three concepts. Copy of transactional data is nothing but extraction, and creation of specially restructured objects is nothing but modeling, and generating the reports is reporting. And based on the concepts and based on the data warehousing definition, we can define the architecture. Data warehouse is three layer architecture. One is source system layer, and second one is data warehousing layer, and third one is presentation layer. Now we can discuss further about the data. Now what we are doing, we are transferring the data from one system to another system. We have one system here, and we have another system here, and this system is having database, and this system is also having database, and this system is OLTP system or ERP system, or in SAP world you can consider this one as ECC system, and this system is OLAP system and data warehousing system, and in SAP world you can call it as BW system. And here you are going to see front end screens, here you are going to see reporting tools, here you are going to see database, and here again you are going to see database. Here you are going to see tables, and tables contains data here, and here you are going to see objects. Objects also going to hold data only. We have three objects: info objects, ODS objects, and info cubes. We generate the data in the OLTP system by running the business transactions. Now I have a transaction, create customer. I have a transaction, create customer. I have another transaction, create vendor. I have another transaction, that is create sales order, and I have another transaction, that is create purchase order. Now once you have performed all these business processes as a end user, then the data will be generated and sits in the corresponding database tables. In SAP ECC system, if you created a customer, then it will go and sits in the customer table, and we have predefined vendor table called LFA1. The data goes and sits in the vendor table called LFA1. sales orders, we have VBAK table, and sales orders information goes and sits in the VBAK table, and purchase orders information goes and sits in the EKKO tables. All these are predefined tables. Now, once data is stored in the OLTP system database, for analysis purpose, this data will be transferred into OLTP system to OLAP system. If you want to transfer the data from this system to this system, first of all we required interface in the sense connection in between these two systems, that is nothing but OLTP system and OLAP system. See, for us the target system is always BW, and you may retrieve the data from different source systems. You may retrieve from SAP ECC system or CRM system or SRM system, all these systems into the BW system. All these are SAP components, and these systems act as source systems for SAP BW. Means source system in the sense it is a system which is going to provide the data to the BW system. Here we have source system types. If source systems are SAP related systems, then source system type is known as SAP components. We may bring the data for analysis purpose from mainframe systems and AS400 systems also. If you are bringing the data from mainframe systems and AS400 systems to SAP BW, then source system type is non-SAP systems. And if you are bringing the data from offline databases like Oracle, and or SQL, then we call the source system types as databases. And sometimes we bring the data from portal based systems also, and sometimes we bring the data from Excel sheets, and sometimes we bring the data from some other data warehousing solutions. Now, all these are different source system types, and this is a source system called portal based system, and Excel in the sense we can call these systems as file system, MDX systems in the sense other data warehousing systems. Now, if you want to bring the data from different systems, all these are based on the system types, we can call these as different source system types. Into the BW system, then we required interface in the sense connectivity in between different source systems to the BW system. Now, if you want to establish the connection in between SAP ECC or SAP components to SAP BW, we have to use an interface called SAPI. This is SAPI. API stands for Application Programming Interface, and SAP created this interface and named this one as Service API. And using Service API, you can establish the connection in between SAP components and SAP BW. Like this, we have one more called BAPI, and Business Application Programming Interface. Using this one, you can establish the connection in between non-SAP system to SAP BW. And we have another interface called DB Connect, and using this DB Connect, we can establish the connection in between the databases to SAP BW. Now, we have portal, and using XML interface or SOAP interface, you can establish the connection in between portal applications and BW. And we have file interfaces. Using file interfaces, you can establish the connection in between Excel and Notepad to SAP BW. And we have something called UD Connect, and using this one we can establish the connection in between the MDX systems to SAP BW. Now we have different source system types, and in order to establish the connection with SAP BW, we have different interfaces. Interface types typically depends on the source system types. If it is SAP components, then SAPI, non-SAP components, then BAPI, offline databases, DB Connect, portal based systems to SAP BW, then XML, Excel sheets and notepads to BW, then file interface, and any data warehousing system to SAP BW, then universal data connector. Now we starting from 7.3, we can have BODS, and we can have smart data access, like that SAP very newly starting from 7.4 powered by HANA, they added few more interfaces also. We can discuss further those interfaces information in further classes whenever we discussed 7.4. Now if you want to transfer the data from one application to another application, we required interfaces, and interface types, we have these many interfaces types. It typically depends on from where we are bringing the data, and we have source systems and source system types. Source systems in the sense it's application or a system which is going to provide data to BW system, and the source systems has been distinguished into different source system types, and here I discussed about different source system types. Now once interface is ready, then only we can transfer the data, and whatever data you are transferring from here to here, this data mainly with respect to ECC, mainly this data is distinguished into master data and transactional data, and with respect to BW, the master data further distinguished into text data and attribute data and hierarchy data, and that's it, 3 datas, and the transactional data again known as transactional data only. So with respect to ECC system, we have 2 types of datas, and with respect to BW system, we have 3 types of datas. Now whenever you transfer the data has to be moved into the BW system. It will be stored in the different data targets. So before retrieving the data, first of all we will try to understand what is master data and what is transactional data. The master data is a data, it is a reference data for a key. Now for a key, in the sense, now we have account number. See, account number is a key or main number to run the bank transactions, correct? In order to get this account number, we have to give lot of information to the bank, like name, address, then phone number, then fax number if you have, and PAN card number. All this information we have to give. So this is a key field, and this is reference information for this key, and in order to run the bank transactions, or in order to become a customer for the bank, we need to give all this information to the bank. So once you have given this information, then system is going to generate, the bank application is going to generate application account number. So for this account number, all this data is nothing but the master data. Now once account number is handy, then we can make use this account number, and we can perform transactions like deposit, and we can perform the other transactions like withdrawal and the transfer. And using account number, once you deposit certain amount, then your balance will be get updated every time, and you are going to perform all these transactions on different dates. Now for this account number, we have transactions, and whenever you perform the transactions, then a different set of data will be generated, and this is nothing but the transactional data. So master data in the sense the reference data, and first we generate this data, and based on once account key is generated, then using that account key we can perform different transactions, then the transactional data will be generated. Now here creation of customer is master data, this is master data, and creation of vendor, this is also master data. Creation of sales order, this is always we need to consider this one as transactional data. Creation of purchase orders, we need to consider as transactional data. So whenever SAP generated the application, they know they are going to generate the master data and the transactional data, master data and the transactional data. For that reason, SAP created certain tables as master data tables and certain tables as transactional data tables. Now SAP created certain front end screens as the master data front end screens, are certain screens they generated especially to generate the transactional data. Now once we transfer the data into the BW system, the same master data is distinguished into text data, attribute data and hierarchy data. Now let me discuss about what is text data, attribute data and hierarchy data. Now consider one employee is joined in one organization, then you can have employee ID. Say employee ID is 2042649. Now by seeing this number, no one know what is this. In other terms, this employee ID belongs to whom. Now if we mention the name or description for the employee ID, then by reading the description everyone will come to know what is this. So the description for a ID is nothing but the text data, and employee ID belongs to certain department, certain cost center, and he will have a designation, and all these are attributes of an employee ID. And employee ID can have subordinates, number of subordinates, and employee ID can have one manager, and this manager could come under another manager. So this is nothing but the hierarchical information. So the description always we call it as text data, and the reference information we call it as attribute data, and whenever you are seeing child and parent relationship in between the IDs, then we call that one as hierarchy data. Now we have transactional data, like whenever the payroll runs for this employee, salary and tax and the professional tax, everything will be generated, and we call this data as the transactional data. Now we have data. This data has to be transferred into the BW system. With respect to BW, we need to bring 4 sets of data. If you want to bring 4 sets of data, then what we really required, we have to select this data. And selection of data in the sense, we have to write a program and we have to write a select statement in that program, and wherever you are seeing a program with a select statement, then we call that one as a extractor program. Extractor program you are going to see in the source system, and which is useful for extraction purpose. Whatever you are extracting, the data has to be transferred. So what we have a extract structure, and this extract structure allows the data to flow through. This extract structure will allow the data to flow through. Then we have a structure, one more structure called transfer structure, and transfer structure is useful for transferring the data from source system to BW system. Then we can have a distinguishing line here so that you can see the source and the target systems, and the same transfer structure again you can see in the BW side so that data can be transferred. And here you are going to see one more structure called communication structure, and once data passes through the communication structure, then finally the update program is going to update the data to the data targets. Update program is going to update the data to the data targets. In this fashion, the data can be copied from your source system to target system. System is going to make use programs and structures. Programs are going to select the data and programs are going to update the data, and the structures are allows the data to flow through. So in order to transfer the data, we are going to make use structures as pipelines, and the extractor program is going to pick up the data and update program is going to update the data. Now finally, once it is updated into the data targets, then using reporting tools we can generate the reports. Here in source system you are seeing extractor program and extract structure and transfer structure, and we combinedly call this one as data source. Data source is a component and which is resides in the source system. It is a combination of extractor program and extract structure and transfer structure. Using the data source only we can bring the data, and we have 4 types of data. So in order to bring 4 types of data from the source system, we have to come up with 4 types of data sources. The first one is text DS, which is useful for bringing the text data, and second one is attribute DS, which is useful for bringing attribute data, and third one is hierarchy DS, which is useful for bringing hierarchy data, and third one is transactional DS, which is useful to bring the transactional data. So in source system or in ECC system we have 4 types of data sources. In BW system, we have 3 types of data targets, and using these 3 types of data targets, info objects and ODS objects and info cubes, we can store the data. Once we have stored the data using reporting tools, we can generate the reports, and these reports can be transferred into the these reports can be published to the portal, and these can be assigned to the end users so that they can perform the analysis. Now this is nothing but representation of the info object, and this info object most of the time which is going to hold the master data, and this is info cube is going to hold the transactional data, and this is an object where it is going to hold the master data as well as transactional data. ODS is useful for holding master data and transactional data, and info object most of the time it is going to hold the master data, and info cube is useful for holding the transactional data. The transactional data is most useful data for analysis purpose when we compare with the master data. Now final conclusion and takeaway points would be, we discussed about data warehouse definition. Data warehouse is copy of transactional data specially restructured for reporting and analysis purpose. Now copy of transactional data is nothing but extraction, specially restructuring is nothing but modeling, and generation of reports is nothing but reporting. And we have three tiers. We do copy the data, or we do extract the data from source system, and we do design specially restructured objects in the BW system, and finally we generate the reports in the presentation layer. Now once we have completed the data warehousing definition and architecture and concepts, we discussed about the data. Data is distinguished into two types: master data and transactional data with respect to the source system. With respect to the BW system, text data, attribute data, and hierarchy data, and transactional data. In order to transfer the data from one application to another application, we required interfaces, and interfaces are nothing but connection parameters, and using interfaces only we can establish the connection in between two different systems. Once interface is built, then you can transfer the data. In order to build the interfaces, we need to find out what type of source system we are, from where we are getting the data. So we have different types of source systems, and based on the source system types, we need to come up with different types of interfaces. Now once we have interface built, then using the data sources in the sense, it's a collection of extractor and extract structure and transfer structure which are part of your source system. And using data sources, you can bring the data. Once we bring the data into the BW system, we can store the data in the data targets. We have three types of data targets. One is info object, and second one is info cube, and third one is ODS object. So all these topics are very important for your next sessions, and we are going to see these informations one more time while discussing the SAP BW. Thank you very much.